Oh, my photo like CEO eh.
Yes. Very good. Very good. Okay, so today we are talking about inventory parts. We're talking about equipment, and we're talking about maintenance management. So the focus will be on inventory and equipment mainly, distinguishing between the two items and also how we manage it. So how we manage the locations for these inventory, how we consume the inventory, how we manage equipment, and the screens that we manage it in. So today's a little bit more in detail than last time. We've got quite a bit of content to go through. It will be a lot of information, but that's why I'm recording, and you can always watch back the video. And see some of the user guides and all of that. I did send through some videos earlier as well on an introduction to maintenance management and an introduction to inventory management. So if you haven't already seen those, please have a watch of those. And they give a good overview about all the different features. Today, I'll be talking a little bit more specifically about the things that you guys will most commonly need to use. And we'll talk about that around a role that I have mimicked off Sobri, so logistics officer type role. Sobri will have a little bit more access than some others because he will need to do receipting and things of that nature. So, for example, compared to Nick, won't need to do receipting, but it's good, you know, for those who may not actually do certain tasks or might have access to those menus to at least understand it, because you will be working with these items, you'll be working with equipment, you'll need to understand how they are managed in the system, as you're quite familiar managing outside the system already. So let's get started. Again, if you have any questions, just jump in and let me know. We can answer it there and then at the time, and we'll go from there. Cool. Marwan, I think you have a video on of some sorts, just in case you don't want to show that in the recording. Cool. All right. So first things first, so you will be given access to Beacon Web, which will have an area called Epicor Guides. I'll just show you what that looks like. So you don't have access to it just yet. We're just working on making this so that both Malaysia and Australia can access it, and it will know who is from what company and show the right information. But effectively, it'll be where you do your timesheets and your leave requests, and just down the bottom along the left-hand menu. I've got more menus than most, but and some are in development, but Epicor Guides is the area here. And then there'll be guides to formal guides and how to do things. For example, today we're going to learn about managing inventory here. So that's the video I was talking about, introduction to inventory management. We're going to be talking about how to issue inventory to jobs, how to return inventory from jobs if somehow you didn't need it, and how to move inventory within the system. And we're also going to be talking about on the maintenance side of things as well. So that will access there. In the meantime, on the intranet, which everyone has access to, there's a little area called TMT Malaysia Epicor Migration SharePoint page. If you visit that, some details on the go live dates, so you can track that. I've got all the useful videos here. I'll add today's video into this as well. I've got links to the user guides, who to contact for help, and you can always post some comments and questions if you have any after the session. So in the meantime, this is where you can access all the guides, and I've linked them in here, as well as the training videos, which I'm doing with everybody today, tomorrow, today, next week, and in the prior week as well. All right, so that's a little bit on guides. So let's first start off talking about parts and inventory. So we're all pretty familiar with TMT part numbers, but there is a TMT part numbering guide, which is this one here. I won't go through that all today, but it's a good reference book for you. It was developed by engineering here in Australia, together with what the requirements are in Epicor, and it details a lot of the things that a part setup is in Epicor. A lot of the definitions, I will explain most of those today, but this is always a good reference guide to go back. So, you know, we talk about quantity bearing parts, we talk about serial tracking, lot tracking, and things of that nature. So that's part numbering guide is a good guide, a good reference guide for you for all things relating to parts, TMT part numbers, that is. Cool. So as you're familiar with TMT part numbers, I'll just quickly show you. It's the 4 digits hyphen 4 digits. We do have some configuration numbers, which is underscore 01, 02, 03, etc. And we have some cut list items, which are hyphen and 3 digits, 001, 002, 003, which can either be a cut list for like, you know, welding several parts together in an aluminium frame, let's say, or it also could be a hose list, right? A cut list for hoses. So that might be the main, you know, hose part number, and then this is the main drawing, and in each of these is a hose list in that drawing. So that's you may have seen those come through either from Australia or in the work that you've been doing yourself as well. One important concept to understand, and I sort of touched on this in the introductory session, is not everything needs a part number now that we're going on to Epicor. In FrankieCore, you were forced that whenever you wanted to buy something through an RTP, that it needed to have a TMT part number of some sort. And if you didn't have one, you can just type new in, and it'll just generate a TMT part number for you, and you just type in the description. That was problematic, and I'm not sure why that was decided in the first place, but it effectively resulted in a lot of duplication of parts, right? Especially standard parts, things like, you know, seals, things like hydraulic fittings, things like fasteners, because it got to a stage where, you know, it's quite hard to find a hydraulic fitting if you didn't have a good dashboard to find that part number in. You know, you may look for 5 minutes and then you struggle and you say, well, I'm just going to create a new one because I know what I want to buy and I'll just create a new one. So there's a lot of duplication which was created as a result of it. What the good thing Epicor has is that when you're buying something, well, there's two things there. We're going to give you much better tools to search for parts and dashboards specifically to search for seals, specifically to search for fasteners, and specifically search for hydraulic fittings. So that should solve a lot of those problems. And the other side is if you want to buy things that are ad hoc in nature, or you want to buy it once off, or it's not really an item that you care to count or care to track in our system, we can use what we call a part on the fly. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in the next slide, but that's that concept there. And that's just ad hoc. The part, you can still buy it, you know, effectively it's a type in description of what it is, and you don't need to generate a TMT part number for it. So there's what we have created is a part number decision chart. And you can find that here as well in this box here. The part numbering guide refers to this chart. So if you ever lose it, you can go back to the part numbering guide and find it. But I've also linked this chart onto the main page there as well. So this is a bit of a decision tree to help you say, well, do I actually need to generate a new part number, a new TMT part number or not, right? So it goes through a few decisions. Does a part number already exist? And if yes, you use that existing part number, and we're providing some tools to better search for part numbers within our system for that. Then there's some questions. Will it exist in CAD in an engineering BOM, for example? You know, yes, no, and then you go through these decisions here as well. Do I want it to be counted? Do I want to put it on the shelf as a spare part? Do I want it to be stocked? So, you know, if it's in a BOM, if you want to count it, if you need to control it in an engineering bill of materials in an engineering specification, then yes, it needs a TMT part number. And you either create that part number in SolidWorks or you create it directly in Epicor, right? But if it doesn't need to be those things, and it's not part of the generic part number list like an invoicing only part number, then just use a part on the fly. It's once off. You still can search for it in the system. You can search for the keywords that you've used. It doesn't disappear after you've bought it, but what it doesn't do is clog up our part number database. So you can still query information on it. You can still find it on the purchase order. You can still track it through, but it doesn't need to have its own TNT part number, and it doesn't need to be in our database of controlled TNT parts. And so that's the concept of a part on the fly. So refer to this decision tree. There's a lot to it, and you'll get familiar as you go along. But this is quite an important one, good for anybody who works in the workshop area, in the engineering area, anything to do with the parts or the tooling, to have this on hand when you're trying to determine if you need to find a part number, generate a new part number, if you're trying to buy something or if you're trying to make something, right? Cool. What else? So let's talk a little bit about source of truth, right? So we're familiar with source of truth, I guess, from a manufacturing sense of the word or from an engineering sense of the word. And if we talk about it, a TNT part number has a source of truth. It has effectively two main sources of truth. One is the source of truth for engineering or design data, right? And that source of truth is your vault, your SolidWorks, right? So that's where you hold the specification, what the part is, its dimensions, its shape, and its drawing, and the specifications that you've stipulated on the drawing. So that's the source of truth for the design data. Now, what Epicor holds in terms of parts in our part database is the source of truth for manufacturing data, right? And manufacturing data could be anything from where do we typically buy it? Is it a part that we typically buy or that we typically manufacture? What's the default supplier for this part? Where can the part be stored? Which warehouses is it eligible to be stored in? And various other information relating to either how we make it or how we build the part. So Epicor holds the source of truth for manufacturing, and SolidWorks holds the source of truth for design data. Now, the syncability between Epicor and SolidWorks isn't quite at a level which I would say is great. We've reached our limitation with the SolidWorks Vault in terms of its capabilities for live syncing, but I hope this year to kick off a project with engineering on both sides to upgrade the SolidWorks Vault, to get Malaysia onto the same Vault as Australia, because you will also be sharing the same part numbers in Epicor. We talked about global parts between the two companies, and so that we can have live syncing between data between the Vault and Epicor. Because at the moment, for example, if you update a description on an existing part number in SolidWorks, that doesn't automatically update in Epicor. The person or the engineer that needs to do it, or the production engineer that touches that part and sees the difference, will need to update it. So there's a few gaps there that need to be filled up in order to make our process more efficient. Epicor, in terms of manufacturing data, really holds what we call, or really is where you deal with the idea of the method of manufacture. So how are you going to go about making this thing, whatever this thing is? How are you going about building this thing, purchasing this thing, and carrying out this thing? And a method of manufacture is a combination between a BOM, the bill of materials, so all of the parts that you need to make this thing as specified by engineering, as well as who actually needs to spend time making it. Do you need to weld it? Do you need to subcontract out some machining? Do you need to paint it? Do you need to, assemble it together? Hydraulic fitters, for example. Do you need to test it? Do you need to do hydraulic testing? Do you need certain certifications? So that's the method of manufacture. And it's effectively how this thing is going to be built, who needs to spend time on it, and where we're going to buy the stuff from. So that's really what Epicor helps you manage in terms of part data and manufacturing data. Ooh. All right, so TMT part numbers. So we talked a little bit about the format of TMT part numbers. They exist in the TMT part number database in Epicor, and they will store related part details. For example, quantity bearing, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, tracking revisions or not tracking revisions, tracking serials, tracking suppliers, warehouses, and purchase or selling information. A part on the fly, on the other hand, is effectively an ad hoc number. It's just a description used for purchasing or for selling that generally won't be repeated or does not require us to store the part details, permanently within our part database. The part doesn't disappear. It still exists on the record, but it only exists for the record you're putting it on. So if you only put it on the sales order, or if you only put it on the purchase order, it will remain with that purchase order, but you won't find it in the part number database. You can still search for that information. You still can see its pricing. You can see, various other details that you ended up buying against it, but it doesn't get stored centrally in the database against, a central part number. So part on fly here, you can see terminal document handling fee or terminal document fee and terminal handling fee. That's the part number that we typed into the part number field. And then this is the part description. And that's just an example there. So I show that to you in the requisitions. You will learn a bit more about that on the requisition side, but this is really useful more on the purchasing when you go and purchase something. And for example, if you want to purchase a camera battery, right? Because the battery that we use for the camera that we take pictures for our equipment before we send them out is dead, and we need to buy a new battery. We only buy that battery maybe once every 5 years. Don't need to create a TMT part number for it. Just write camera battery, and then in the description you put camera battery, put the model number or the brand or whatever in there, and you just buy that once off, part on the fly, easy done. Don't need to create a TMT part number and go through the process for that. Okay, so part information. So this screen here is the part maintenance screen or the part entry screen, and I'll just show that to you here. So when you guys log in for the first time on Go Live on the Monday the 4th, or if we get you the login on the test system beforehand, your screens will look a little bit like this. I've generated some standard layouts and saved all the relevant screens for what I believe you will need in your role. Hopefully I've got it right, but if I haven't, then we can always help you to adjust and put the new screens on, put the relevant screens that you need. And over time, you can adjust this to suit yourself. You can personalize this as yourself, but it's just the default one that I put on to help you get started, right? So I put, this is Sobri's one. I think Sobri, Marwan, Bob, and Anwar will all have the same one. Same level of access, and these are the screens that they will see. So they've got receipt entry, they need to do receipting for stores, they've got requisitions, they can track purchase orders, they can, we'll talk about the issuing of inventory, they've got equipment, and they've got some job tracking information here. So this screen that I'm just about to talk about on the slide is this one, part. So this is where you edit parts. So we click on this one, and you can edit some part data here. Now, we're providing an interface within Beacon Web to allow you to request changes to parts, because we're centralizing the changing of part information or the creating of new parts in our global parts workflow. We're centralizing that through Australia, and there's going to be part administrators who deal with electrical parts, mechanical parts, that will review these requests and work with you on getting these part numbers through into the system there. But this is a screen that you'll see, and this is a screen that I'm going to talk about on the slide here. Okay, cool. So fairly simple. When you're viewing part information, we start off with a part number. So that's the TMT part number. That's the TMT part number's description. In this case, this is a socket head cap screw, a fastener. On the right here, there's some SOLIDWORKS properties. You'll be familiar. Description 2, material, finish, and process. Material is probably the most important one out of all of them. It stipulates what the material is. It could be 316 stainless steel, A470 in this case. It could be mild steel. It could be aluminium, 6060, etc., etc. Right? So these are the different material types for that part number. And as you know, we don't store the material information in the description. We have a separate field for that as part of our engineering. And that was stipulated by engineering since a long time ago. Type. So in terms of part information, it's either one of two things. It's either purchased or manufactured. Now, that doesn't mean I can't go and make it. Now, I know we won't make a fastener, but we could if we want. But there are some other parts where typically we purchase it, but sometimes we may make it, depending on, you know, whether we have the resources inside or not, or even the equipment. More often than not, it might be a manufactured part. Typically we make it, but if we're busy, we might outsource it. So then it becomes purchased. But this is just the default. This is just telling the system we typically purchase or make the part. Then the next bit here is unit of measure, right? And, you know, many items are counted items, so they just go in each in whole numbers. But other unit measures could be volume, like liters, or could be length, like meters, centimeters or kilometers, and that's really where you stipulate the unit of measure, or where you see the unit of measure class. Now, there are different classes here as well for inventory, sales, or purchasing. Most of the time they're the same, but for example, just for your information, we can stock, let's say, some round bar, lengths of round bar. We can stock it in inventory in millimeters, and we measure in millimeters. We can sell it in meters, and we might buy it in kilometers. But that sounds very silly, but we can if you so wish. So you can have different, you can't have different unit measures, but you can have different how to say, magnitudes of that unit of measure. So as you know, centimeters, meters, and millimeters are just orders of magnitude in the difference in scale, and that's just something that we can set. Product group is more about selling and how we categorize our TMT part numbers that we sell to customers. And this is just mainly grouping for financial purposes. So you don't need to pay too much attention for it, but it's pretty much a purchase part to be consumed, purchase part to be sold, or manufactured part to be sold or consumed. Really the four options for that as well. Then we get to part class. So before part class, let's talk a little bit about quantity bearing. So let's jump to this slide here. So this is potentially a new concept. I mean, in Epicor, you have been dealing with this concept already. And for those who received the initial training, when we went live in Epicor, we had to effectively have the same fields in Epicor. So when you look at part numbers here, you will already see some of that data that you've seen here. You've seen part class, right? And you've seen quantity bearing or not. So you have some level of familiarity, but you may not know exactly what it means. And I will, it's written here in red effectively, but let's expand a little bit on it. So quantity bearing. So quantity bearing effectively means we want to count the part. So a part can either be quantity bearing or not quantity bearing. If we want to count it, hold it in stock, or maybe hold it in stock sometime in the future, you know, we want to use it in manufacturing or we want to sell it, it needs to be quantity bearing. So 9 times out of 10, a part is quantity bearing, right? And if in doubt, we make it quantity bearing, because it's always easier to take it off of quantity bearing than it is to change a part from non-quantity bearing to quantity bearing. And the reason for that is quantity bearing means we want to count it. And if we ever have held it in inventory and suddenly we want to, so let's say it's not quantity bearing, we're not counting it, but suddenly we do want to count it, then the system will ask, well, all of these times that you've done something with the part, you've bought it, you put it on the job, you sold it, you know, where did it exist, right? How can we count it? And then the system, you know, has some trouble doing that. And we need to do some fixes to update the part in order to make it. So it's just much harder to change it from quantity bearing to from non-quantity bearing to quantity bearing. So some examples of quantity bearing parts: 4-port male Hopstad, 10K. a zinc anode, a VX gasket, a fastener. All of those items we are typically quantity bearing. Seals, all the things that you make, many of the things that you service will be quantity bearing part numbers because we either use them in manufacture, we sell them, or we may put them on the shelf as a spare part. So quantity bearing is the most common scenario. Non-quantity bearing, on the other hand, we don't really care to count it. We don't want to track it in terms of knowing how many there are at any given time. And generally, these are consumables. So we may want to order them often, and therefore we have a TMT part number to store, the basic data. But we just consume it. We don't care to count it. It's just there on the shelf. When it's empty, somebody reorders it. When it's full, great. And examples of this are like masking tape, zip ties, WD-40, Sikaflex, things of that nature. So these are items that we more often than not consume, and we don't really care to count. But we have a TMT part number because we order it often, and we just want to, we don't want to have to, type the same description in multiple times. We just type in the TMT part number, description populates automatically. So that's quantity bearing. When an item is quantity bearing, it needs to have a part class that is a stock part class. So the stock part classes are either, and I'll just show you an example one here. Are really either mechanical, electrical, electronics, or general. I'll just generate a new part number. Boom. So electrical, electronics, general, or mechanical stocked. And these are stock part classes. So this just categorizes them. There's no real difference between them, but it just allows you to say, well, is it an electrical part? Is it an electronics part, or is it more mechanical side? And if it's not really classified in either three of them, then just call it a general, right? And so that just allows you to group parts a bit better. Then if the part is not quantity bearing, there's a whole host of other classes that we can have. It could be a drawing or firmware, right? We don't care to count drawings. We don't care to count firmware, right? These are, almost intangible things. IT equipment, office type equipment, stationery, postage, and workshop consumables. So consumables here, electrical, electronic, mechanical, repairs and maintenance. So things like glues, things like Sikaflex, tape, zip ties, and all of that would have the consumables part class here. Cool. Let's talk about tracking lot numbers and serial numbers. So as you know, some parts can be serial tracked, and serial tracking, effectively means you care about its traceability in some way, shape, or form. So we want to track those items. So in Epicor, you can set a part number to be serial tracked, and therefore every single time you do a transaction to that part, you put it on a job, you consume it to a job, you buy it on a purchase order, you receipt it into stores, you sell it to a customer, you move it in inventory. The system will ask you, yep, you're moving that part number, but what's the serial number that you're moving? So you've got complete traceability. You can look up that serial number at any point in time, and you can find that part, that serial, that part, where it came from, where it was bought, what job made it, so that you can trace its data all the way through the system. It could be, for example, there's an incident that happened offshore in terms of equipment damage. Material failed for some reason, so you're going to track it through the system, and you're going to find what job made it, what the material certification was for that material before we machined it, and then you're going to trace that through. So that's a serial track part, and you all will be quite familiar with the concept of traceability. Other reasons, or the main reasons really, is, you want to have tests, you have some sort of documentation associated with it. It could be a load test, it could be a visual inspection, it could be some sort of non-destructive testing on it. So lifting sling sets or a female hot stab receptacle, which we've tested to 15K, 1.5 times working pressure, is an example of a commonly serial track part. And as you know, serial track parts, because we want to trace them, because we track them, because we care to know where they are, they need to be quantity bearing. So whether it's lot or serial tracked, it has to be quantity bearing because we care about counting it or knowing where it is at any point in time. Lot tracked, on the other example, is lot tracked, or sometimes known in other industries as batch tracked, are items where we track the batch number, the lot number, from the manufacturer, from the material manufacturer, or from the the OEM that has provided this item for us. We're not really in the industry where we make lot tracked items. We don't make timber, we don't make seals, we don't, we don't get raw serial material and cut out seals and we need to track the batch number. So that's not really something that we do in our industry, but we buy in a lot of lot tracked items. We buy in raw material, we buy in aluminium angle, we buy in bar stock, we buy in O-rings and seals that might have special specifications, and they have come from a batch from the original manufacturer. So that's what a lot is. And we can consume part of a lot. So you can have 5 meters of aluminium angle, and you can consume half a meter in manufacturing. Whereas a serial tracked item, it's per each, right? Only one item can have one serial number, and that serial number travels with it. Whereas many items, if you cut the piece of angle into multiple pieces, can have the same lot number. So that's just the difference between serial track and lot track and what it means. And as I mentioned, every time you do a transaction in Epicor, if you receipt it in stores, Sobri, if you transfer it, in inventory, if you issue it to a job, Amaral, if you return it from a job, or if City sells an item, from our shelf that's serial tracked, it will ask what's the serial number, what's the lot number. And that ensures traceability within the system. So, that's something that a lot of the production engineers and the engineers really loved about Epicor, is that it forces you to maintain that traceability throughout the system, which is great when they're trying to track information through. Talked a little bit about unit of measure. So I actually had a slide on it. I forgot about that one, but we talked about counted in each. We talked about length, could be meters, centimeters, millimeters, kilometers. We talked about volume, area, meters squared, and the other one is time, hours, days, and months. So those are the different unit of measures we can have for part number in Epicor. Fairly simple. So we talked about each part can, by default or by typically, either purchased or manufactured. And a part can effectively be purchased to one of 3 things, right? It can be purchased to a job, and the cost goes straight to the job. It could be purchased into inventory, and the costs remain on inventory and stay on our financial books in an area called the balance sheet. And we track those. And financial auditors also audit those, and that's why companies have to do regular stock takes. The supermarkets have to do stock takes, and manufacturers have to do stock takes. Distribution warehouses have to do stock takes, and because we hold inventory, we also need to do stock takes because we need to know that we're controlling what we say is on our books and what we say physically out there match. And it's also important because if you need a spare urgently offshore, and you look in Epicor and you see, oh yeah, we've got a shilling spare for an RV manipulator, and you see, yep, it's there, it's in whatever the store's warehouse. Boom, you go there, yes, it's on the shelf, awesome, send it out, boom. But if you go there and it's not there because we haven't been tracking our inventory, then your life is suddenly 100 times harder, right? And then you need to order one urgently. You need to hunt around for it, and it's difficult, and you can't then trust the system, right? So the system is only as good as the data you put in, but it helps your life. It helps things in emergency situations to find where things are. And the other reason is buying it to business expenses. So, and then the costs just go to, effectively our business overhead and our expenses account. And, things like buying zip ties, buying gloves, buying safety glasses, those will all go to, general, either uniform cost center or safety cost center, overhead expenses that we need to run the business, to keep people safe or to give people the tools that they need to continue to operate. And parts can be manufactured. So they can be manufactured in a job, either for a sales order. So that's a client request. We can make it and put it on the shelf for inventory. Again, will be on the books, and we might want to make it so we can have a spare part. You might want to make a spare manifold of some sort, a spare, MEE bottle or whatever, or a spare LED lights enclosure, right? Various things of that nature. Or it could be made for another job or for a project. And then, the cost will go to that project, and then the project effectively will have a sales order or multiple sales orders for different, financial milestones or invoicing milestones. So those are the three reasons why a part can be manufactured in the job, either to selling directly to the customer, either putting it on the shelf, or, in a major project like the HES project.
Yes, Van.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if we have equipment that needs to be fixed. For an instance, we have one tool, but it needs to be fixed. Then but it doesn't related to any project. Where do it actually park? Because just now the cost is only 3, right? Inventory.
Yeah.
Cost,
So
furniture.
that's a separate job. It's called a maintenance job.
Oh.
And then those costs go to the repairs and maintenance, cost center. So I will show you a bit later how we manage maintenance jobs, but you effectively raise a maintenance job for that equipment because you're doing some maintenance or service work on it. And then you will book the parts or buy the parts in and book the time, labor to fix it. It's not for any specific, project, but the costs will go into repairing that tool so that's operationally ready to hire out again for the clients, right? So that's maintenance jobs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So here, this side, I'm talking more about manufacturing,
Oh.
but yeah, service and maintenance, which you deal with a lot as well. I will talk a bit later in this presentation. Yep.
Copy that.
Cool. But that was a good question anyway. That's it's good to know. Yeah. So there's not just the manufacturing side, there's also the service and the maintenance side as well. All right. So part tracking. So this is how you find part numbers. Okay. So there are many, many tools to find it, and some are more useful than others depending on what you're looking for, how you're looking for it. But we'll start off at the top, which hopefully will be the most useful one for you. So still in development, but I should be on track to release it by the time of go live, if not very shortly after. We will have in Beacon Web, where you do your timesheets, this area called parts, right? And this area first starts off, allows you to search for part numbers. I've mimicked this a little bit in what's available in Epicor, but this just simply allows you to not have to log into Epicor if you want to search for some part numbers. And it gives us the ability to do some, custom coding so that we can enhance some of the searching. But we have what we're calling here part search, and we have, 5 different options here to search for a part. You can do a general part search where you're just throwing in keyword terms, manifold or something of that nature. You might want to look for a part that's, from a specific vendor, right? A specific manufacturer. You might want to filter it down where it's purchased or manufactured, or you might want to filter it down to a specific part class. For example, you might be looking for a specific where's the uniform one? Uniform part number, because we have, the same TMT branded t-shirt, and, I don't know whether stores or purchasing sorts that out. Here in Australia, stores orders new uniform and manage it, but, we want to order more of that TMT t-shirt over there, right? So we've got other things that we can filter by here, but this just allows you to a broad general search for general part numbers. Then this is the ones where I said a lot of the parts which we have standard part numbers for. We've had this part, if you think hydraulic fitting, if you think fastener, we are bound to have the part number already because we've been operating TMT for 20 plus years. We have bound to at least come across that fastener unless it's some sort of, unique material, titanium. It's like an M30, whatever 8 size or something like that. It's, it's very large. Then yeah, maybe we don't have a part number for that one yet. But if you're talking about an M10 socket head cap screw, we have that part number. So this is the fastener search. You can go metric or imperial. You can go, I want to look for a nut and, search from there, right? This may not return data because we haven't yet finished it, but effectively it allows you to break that down. I'm looking for bolts and screws. And then there's another category here. I can see it's not, there's a few bugs. Then it allows you to say, am I looking for, what sort of different types of bolts and screws there?
Sven.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, on regards of hydraulic hoses, right? Let's say we have the same length, but a different type of hose. We have R2, R6, R8, R7, right? Do we still need to make a new part number? You get what I mean? Or
engineering normally specify that, but I think if it's a different length but the same type with the same fittings on the end, it effectively just has a different configuration number. That sort of question is probably best to talk with the engineering team, either here in Australia or in Malaysia about. But as I understand, if there's one parameter which changes, its length or a material or maybe an end fitting, then usually you use configuration part numbers to manage that. So you don't need to create the same the different parent part number. You just will have _01, _02, or 001, 002, 003, something like that, right? So I've seen some ROV hose list, it's the same part number, but they just have -001, -002, -003. And the hoses vary in lengths. I don't know whether they vary in fitting size because I haven't, in my time as a production engineer, we didn't actually build an ROV because that was the period of time between the Mark II and the Mark IV. But I do know that those drawings are kicking around somewhere.
one more thing, Sven. You remember how when Frankie called last time, they have a master fittings list part number?
Yeah.
Also the O-rings. Is that number still can be used, or you guys just transfer it, or new transfer? So still can be refer.
Correct. Yeah. So we've taken, it's effectively all defined from the SOLIDWORKS library. So I don't know if you've ever met Jared Murray. He spent a lot of time. He was our, our main SOLIDWORKS guru, I guess. Having the standard library of parts. So standard fasteners, standard hydraulic fittings, standard seals, all come from SOLIDWORKS. And we've put them all into Epicor. We've filled in all of these fields here, the material, we've put the standard descriptions, and we've spent time filling in what we call the metadata, all the classes and the subclasses. And then now we've built these interfaces so that you can go, right, I'm looking for a 90-degree elbow. Boom, all the 90-degree elbows here. Now you just have to figure out the size. Is it JIC ½ inch? Is it 3/4 inch, etc.?
Nice. Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
So this will help you. I know fittings are quite hard to find, again, straight connector, teaser crosses, etc. So we spent a bit of time filling in all the data in Epicor, so that makes it easier to find the part numbers so that we minimize duplication. So same with seals as when, you're looking O-ring, backup ring, gaskets, and it just allows you to narrow down on seals. And the last one is raw materials. So the production engineers here, we've got a lot of raw materials because we have a machine shop. So we machine our own items, and therefore we have, quite a lot of part numbers already, for, 50 mil round bar, aluminium, 606 or 316 stainless steel. They all have been specified in the system already, ready to go. Cool. So that's part searching in Beacon Web. So that's this one here. Then there's enterprise searching in Epicor, which I'll quickly show you. minimize this. So up here in the top right-hand corner is a little search icon. You can do two things. You can either search for a menu. So if we say, hey, Nick, you need to be using the job tracker. You say, okay, so I'll go in here and I write job tracker. Boom, there's the job tracker. Now I've got a lot of job trackers. You have less because I've got access to all different areas, but this is how you find the menu. The other thing is you know, Sobri is looking for part number and trying to find some information. He knows you know, whoever gave him the information didn't know a lot and they just say, oh, it's a manifold. Okay, great, manifold. I'm just going to type this in and then see how I do, right? He said, okay, it's a manifold, but I'm looking for a specific, you know, I'm looking for part number, or I might be looking at manifold that's an equipment. So I just click on this flag here, equipment, tag, and then I show in the grid view, and then these are all the equipment now that have the word manifold somewhere in it. And at least now it's a narrowed list. You know, you're talking about maybe 20, 30 items. At least I can start to narrow it down from here and try to find what I'm looking for. So this is very good for broad searches within the system. And it's not just for searching part numbers. You can search for equipment. You can search for supplier parts. You can search for purchase orders. You can search for where this description or this part may be on a job or quote or sales order. It might be a serial number. You might have bought it in a requisition. So the whole lot everywhere in Epicor. So use this often if you go, right, I've got some data. I don't have heaps, but I know that I'm looking for it in a job, for example. And you can go from there. These are some of the other tools, advanced part search, inventory dashboard, hydraulic fittings dashboard. So I'll just show you here. So I've saved some of these in here. So like I said, this is what Sobri and the other logistics team can see. You know, dashboard inventory, advanced part search dashboard is here. Equipment dashboard is there. It just allows you to go through those things. You know, searching for you shouldn't need to, you know, you can jump into Epicor, but we've also done it in FrankieCore, hydraulic fittings. There's a dashboard here, sorry, in FrankieCore, in Epicor. And here you refresh and you've got all of the, where am I in Malaysia? Oh, sorry, I'm in Malaysia. You have no parts. I need to change company. But we'll be uploading the part data from the Australian database soon. Material search. So I'll leave this here. I won't go through each of them just in the interest of time, but this is the most powerful one for you. This is the next one within Epicor, and these are really your two biggest tools if you want to go on a search for finding parts within our part database. Oh, and the other one, I think Nick asked this question last time as well, but we'll just quickly recap. Let it load again. You can always right mouse click on any grid that looks like this in Epicor and you can copy to Excel, and then you can export it there. You can manipulate the data if you need to be. You can do searching, Control F searching, etc. So don't forget, you can always export grid data from Epicor into Excel. Just right mouse click and go to this option here. Cool. Yes.
The Beacon Web and the Enterprise Search, they have some sort of data or different of data.
Say again, some sort.
Yeah, the Beacon and the Enterprise.
Yeah.
The data are the same or different data?
Same. So both Beacon Web and Enterprise look in Epicor. So it will always be data from Epicor. The Beacon Web search, the one that we've developed for you here is just focused around part numbers. So effectively, the Beacon Web search that we created here is enterprise search filtered by, just waiting for it to load, this tag here, parts. Enterprise search allows you to look at other records. and we haven't yet pulled that into Beacon Web. We may do in the future, but enterprise search is already quite powerful. The only reason why we pull parts into Beacon Web is because in addition to the part searching, we're giving you a part creation request, part change request, the ability to request changes to global parts or to create new parts. You can request those through. And in that way, we can manage all the global parts between the two companies. So that's why parts have been pulled out into Beacon Web. And because parts are important, like parts are the center of everything, right? The core of, everything we do here.
So if you change the part on the beacon, this will reflect in the enterprise, right?
Correct. Yep. So Beacon Web is just an interface that we developed in-house that communicates directly with Epicor. So it shows information from Epicor exactly as it is in Epicor. It just gives us a bit more power to display it in a user-friendly manner. And when you do something, you save your timesheet, you submit your timesheet, you approve your timesheet, you do a leave request, it saves the data into Epicor. So everything comes out of the Epicor database. And so the Beacon Web is just a tool to manage the data. Yeah. Cool. All right. So a little bit on editing basic part data. So in Malaysia, you will have limited access to edit part data within the system. Just let me, because we effectively want you to use Beacon Web to do that, right? And to request those changes. The data which you can edit in here, oh, the menu just disappeared, is basic, is local information like warehouse. I'm just, hang on, where did it go? Oh, it's because it doesn't have the access. Okay, let me use this one instead. So the part maintenance screen. So UB in Malaysia, this is mainly for the logistics team, who are managing inventory and managing locations. But I'll just cancel this. But in Malaysia, in Epicor, you will be able to edit data like, so for purchasing, you'll be able to edit the default supplier here. So you can pick a supplier, and then that means that whenever you go and buy this part, this supplier will be, as a default, populated for the purchase. You can change it. Doesn't mean you have to use that supplier all the time, but it's just the default one. The other thing that you can do is add new warehouses to that part. So in Epicor, if a part needs to be in another warehouse, so if we look at this part, in Australia, we've got the C building, we've got a main warehouse, and we've got an SWS offshore warehouse. So this part number can be held in stock in inventory in one of these three warehouses. Now, we have many more warehouses. So I can add a new warehouse. So I go new warehouse, and I can add, for example, I'm sending it now to Typhoon 20. And now I add Typhoon 20, click save, and then now it's adding Typhoon 20. The ability for this part number to be sent to the Typhoon 20 warehouse offshore. There are some tools that when we move these parts, the warehouse gets added automatically, so you don't always need to do it manually, but this is just how you do it. The other good thing here for the logistics team is that you can set what warehouse is the primary warehouse for this part. So at the moment, we can see this part number, its primary warehouse is the SWS offshore warehouse. So that means the offshore warehouse is a container where they store all their spare parts for offshore campaigns, and that's the primary warehouse. You can also specify, if you want, a bin. So, which bin does this part typically sit in? And just helps you when you're receipting items into inventory. It helps you when you're moving. The system will automatically populate the primary warehouse and the primary bin default, and it saves you a few seconds, a few clicks of time each time. So that's some of the basic data that you can edit within Epicor. Don't worry too much about it. Most of it you'll be doing in Beacon Web, but that's just a quick show of that. When you come to the case where you do need to do that, Sobri, Marwan, Bob, Anwar, and team, you know, we will guide you through that process, because you may have forgotten, or you may be like, oh, I vaguely remember, but I'm not quite sure exactly where. So we will help you through that. And then after, you know, 2, 3, 4 times, you'll be familiar with that. Part creation and change requests. So this is not yet fully developed, but effectively you'll be able to request a part number. So you enter the part description, manifolds, you know, system, blah, 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 whatever it might be, right? And then you're stipulating some of the data that showed you. Is it purchased or manufactured? What's its material? 316 stainless steel. What's its unit of measure? Well, it's each. Boom. Is it quantity bearing? In most cases, it would be. Part class, it's a mechanical part because it's a manifold. I want to track the revision. I want to track serial number because I need to do pressure testing on it. This is a manufactured item. We make it in-house, but if it's a purchase item, you might want to specify a vendor part number or manufacturing part number, and you might want to have some comments that sit with the part, and then you can submit your request. And then our part administrator in Australia, who deals with mechanical parts, will review that request. That way they can help you adjust any details if need be. And then they will approve it, and then it will exist in the database for you to use, put on a job, to buy, or whatever. And then that will go straight into the Epicor database. One thing to note here, I put it in big and red. Again, always ask yourself, do I need a part number, right? So if you're thinking I'm buying something, if you're thinking, oh, it's a laptop battery, do I actually need a TMT part number for that? So you can click this link and it'll bring you to that this decision tree, and that can just help you decide whether you actually need a part number or not. Yeah. Part changing. So if there's a part number that already exists, you know, you load the part number in. I don't know whether this works. I think it does. Maybe not yet. We're still working on it. But you load the part number in. There'll be some current details of the part number. And then there'll be details that you can change. You know, for example, you want to amend the description. You know, the description's a little bit wrong. So amend the description. You know, maybe it's not purchase type. Maybe it's actually manufactured. It's wrong. Somebody did it wrong within the system. Just update the information. Maybe you want to fill in some of the class data. So, you know, it's mechanical, it's a fastener, it's a metric, and it's a washer. And it's 316 stainless steel. You know, maybe it doesn't have the material data at the moment. You want to update it. So this allows you to update or change information in the system. Some of them are read-only because we can't change it once we've made the part. But the ones that you can change, you'll have access to be able to change it here. And then you can submit it. And again, it gets reviewed by the part administrator here in Australia, whether it's electrical, electronic, or mechanical. And then they'll approve it. And then the changes will be in Epicor after that.
Sven?
Yes.
Part number change request include a multi-body part number and configuration part number?
Yes, you can as well. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Any part number that's a TMT part number, including configurations, multi-body parts, etc. Yep. So if there's some data that's not quite right from the manufacturing sense, you can request to update that information. Yep.
Then
Yes.
for the creation part number, how is the approval?
Say again, you broke up there.
The creation of the part number, how long the approval?
I want to make it as quickly as possible because I don't want you to hold you guys up. It's a new workflow that we're introducing. So the expectation is they turn it around within a few hours or less. But again, we sort of will introduce you to these people. There's a little menu here, I think, which shows you show part admin list. It's not connected at the moment, but it will give you the names of the people who are approving these parts, and you can Teams them. You can say, hey, I've just sent through a request. I need this urgently. Can you please review and approve? And we'll have backup there as well. So if they're on leave or something like that, then somebody else will be watching, monitoring it. Yeah. So I want to make sure that that's you're not waiting days or many hours for the change. Yeah. Cool. All right. Now we go into moving inventory, right? So if a part is on the shelf, these are some of the things that you can do to move them. So go first with inventory bulk transfer. So this is a screen here, which you will have access to. Hang on, let me find a bin which has some parts. I'll show you the inventory dashboard. So the inventory dashboard is where you go to look what you have in stock on hand. So we refresh. I want to look in the bunker here in Australia. We're going to create an inventory dashboard that allows you to see Australian stock as well. So you can, if you see some stuff in Australia, then you can get in touch with Australia and say, oh, hey, we're in emergency. The lead time is too long for us to make or buy this part, but we see you have it here on the shelf. Can you send us up one, right? And then at least then you have visibility of the stuff we have visibility of stuff you have, and then we can share things if they're needed in emergency. So this will be amended so that you can see both Australia and Malaysia parts. Let's have a look. 2 ports, hot stab out bottom. We have 26 in BC 105. So if I want to move that part from that bin to another bin, so BC 105, search, I want to move the 2 port hot stab bottom and top mount. So I will select both. So this allows you to move both. It's from this warehouse. That's the from bin. I want to send it to East Workshop. And I want to send it to EA 101, for example. A101. Yep, boom. And I want to send all 26. See, there's 26 here. So I just type 26, 26. Boom. And I want to write a quick reference. Sobri said move it. It can be whatever reference. It could be, an email, or you want something in the future that if it's important for somebody to know why that was moved, then you can write a reference here. Urgent request to move, whatever. So, and then click transfer, and then away it goes. And then those parts will now move to this bin, EA 101. So just to prove that that works, I will now go to the East Workshop, press OK. And I'll just group by the bin. So I just drag that bin number up to the blue area here. EA 101, I can see here are my 2 parts that I just moved, 26, 20 and 26. So this is how you move inventory within the system from one bin to the next. Later for Jiwa, Peter and Hatta, we will be managing inventory for your offshore. We're just starting that with the operations team here in Australia. Owen's driving it. And he's got Typhoon 31, Typhoon 22, Typhoon 23, and Typhoon 22, I think I already mentioned. Typhoon 21 and Typhoon 30 soon to come, but we are managing inventory already offshore, and Australia are transferring parts from stores, buying it into inventory, making it into inventory, and sending it offshore, and they're starting to be able to track inventory in what we call Beacon Remote, which is like FrankieCore Remote, except it communicates with Epicor instead, and it allows you to manage inventory offshore and also see inventory that's onshore. So it's better visibility and all that. So that will come. We'll do that as a separate project for Malaysia once we're happy with the process in Australia and it's all working smoothly.
Any idea on a time frame on that?
Oh, time frame. So as Owen's one is, we started that almost a year and a half ago, and because of Owen's lack of time, it's been difficult, but we're there now. So he's going to get all the Mark II ROVs up and running, and then it would be good maybe after that point in time we'll get the Mark IIs for you guys. But let's say sometime next year, early next year would be a realistic time frame, I'd say, given what I know on Owen's side.
Okay, cheers. Oh, that's fine. Next.
Cool. So inventory transfer. So that's effectively how you transfer inventory. You can transfer inventory one at a time using this menu. But if you've got the other menu, I don't see why you would need to. This one's a bit different. You type in the part number directly. Where did my dashboard go? I need a part number. Quadruple 0315. You say how many you want to move. It's currently in the East workshop in EA 10. EA 101. 26, not 36. You can see there's 26 on hand, and I want to move it back to the bunker BC 105. Made a mistake. Yeah. Now, if this part number is serial tracked or lot tracked, you will see these buttons here, this one here, or that one there, highlight. Now, this part number is not either of those things, but you would then click into here, and then you will select the serial number that you're moving, or select the lot number that you're moving for that transaction. And then go from there. So that's the whole traceability thing that I was talking about before. Transfer, and away it goes into the bin. And that's the bulk transfer, or the single part moving transfer. Probably use this one the most, but you can use this one if you're quickly moving a single part.
Sven?
Yes.
If you want to transfer 2 or 3 items, you need to do by one.
Again, sorry, do one by one, or do the, is that what you asked?
Few things like 5 items.
Yep.
We need to key in one by one like that.
Oh, so I would use the bulk transfer, this one. This one's especially good if they're all in the same bin first up. So BC 105, and then you select, this has only got one part number in this bin. Let's go here, EA 101, search. And then you go, well, I want to move that one. I hold the control key, that one, and that one. And now I can move all of these parts in one go, yeah?
Okay.
So you don't have to move it one by one. You use this screen to move many at once. Yep. All right, now, say again. Or was that an accident?
Ben,
Yes.
I'll be leaving this meeting because I had another meeting to join.
Okay, no problem. We've got a recording, so I'll send through the recording afterwards.
All right, thanks. Thank you for your understanding.
No problem. Okay, so the next one is issuing material to a job, and issuing and returning are sort of just the same thing, but in a different direction. So issuing is important. So one, inventory movement or inventory transfer, this one or this one, is how you move inventory from one bin to the next. You might move it from that shelf to that shelf. or from one warehouse to the next warehouse, that's inventory transfer. You're just moving it within inventory. It stays in inventory. You can move it also to the scrap. There's a warehouse called scrap. So if you are throwing away the item, then move it to the scrap warehouse. So there's a warehouse called scrap in your offshore, and then there's a scrap bin, and then you move it to that scrap bin. Yeah. So that's, you've thrown away the equipment, and then finance will look at that scrap bin, and then they'll take it out of inventory. They need to know when item is being taken out of inventory, because they need to take it off the cost. They need to take it off of our account, financial account. So you just send it to the scrap bin, and then you throw it away, and then finance will take care of it from there. The other thing is issuing. So if you're doing service on a equipment and you need to use a new filter that you have on the shelf, a spare filter, right? And you're replacing the filter. So you need to issue that filter from the shelf, from inventory to the job. You use issue material. So material is a thing that you need to buy or make on the job. It's put on the job at the time, and then you're issuing this part number to that job. I need to pick a job number that is released. So this is a job for compensator level sensor. That's the assembly level sensor housing. Now, if the material is already there, you notice that there's a material 316 stainless steel tube. Maybe you're issuing that, but if the material is not already there, you can add the material to the job. What's wrong with this job number? Something is wrong. Here we go. What is going on? Okay. Part number, let's pick a part number I want to issue. So let's say you're issuing this O-ring. 095042. Hey, what's going on? Yeah. 095042. That's the O-ring, and I'm issuing 2. Save and exit. Oh, yeah, job is complete. Okay, let me pick a job number. Sorry, I should have had a job number prepared for this session, but I thought I'll be able to find one quickly. Save and exit. Oh, that's one of those. Okay, anyway. Let me quickly find a job that's not complete. So while I'm here, I can just show you the job overview dashboard then. So I want to pick a planner. Let's pick Paul Chung. So this shows all of Paul Chong's jobs, all the open jobs. So 108606. Good. All right. That I'm lucky. 5042. Okay. So now I've added the material to the job. So there it is. It's material 170 here, automatically been added. If these fields are blank, just type in what I wrote here, main and main. And that's fine. Then you want to issue 2. and you might want to write a reference. It could be anything in there. You are now issuing this part from, where is it coming from? 09. It's coming from EA 101 in the East workshop. EA 101. If, again, it's a serial track part or lot track number, these buttons will come highlighted and you need to select it. But if it's not in this case, then you just press OK. And then now this material will be on this job. So if I open up this job in job tracker here, right mouse click, open with job tracker. The test system is a lot slower than the live system, so don't worry too much about that. If I go to materials, 170, that was our material. Now there's a nice green tick on it, and we show that there was 2, and we've issued 2 to this job. So boom, now the importance of this is now the cost of this item has come from inventory and has gone onto the job. And so now the item is traceable onto that job, and the costs are traceable onto that job as well. And then we've kept our inventory accurate. So we haven't just used the item out of inventory and then later you go see you've got 10 there, and no, you go see you've only got 2 and the system says you've got 10. Returning material. So if you accidentally issued the material, this doesn't happen often, so you shouldn't need to do it often. But there's the screen called the return material screen. And it's pretty much the same screen. You say what job you're returning from, 108606. Material 170. That's that same part number. Oops, I by accident issued to the job. I want to put it back in the East workshop, back into EA 101. Okay, off I go. Now it's taken off of the job. I can go back in the job tracker. I click refresh. Click refresh, come on. And now you can see the green tick has gone off of the material. It's now no longer on the job. And all good. So now it's back in inventory. So those are the 2 things. Move the item in inventory, issue it to the job, so you're consuming it to the job, or if you do it by accident, return it to the job. Now, also, sometimes you might buy something. You buy something to the job, and then you don't no longer need it. You know, we overbought it, or we bought the wrong thing. Then we put it back on the shelf. We can return the item that we bought from that job. So it might have arrived on the job because you bought it to the job, and then you can return it afterwards. So that's another example there, mainly for Amaral and Saiful Haq to understand, but also for logistics will be good.
Sven.
Go ahead, Tazriq.
Yes, Sven. I just want to ask for the inventory transfer or the issue materials. Who has the
That's
authority?
right, not clear, like you in cave.
Who has the authority?
I'm speaking from somebody's PC.
Did you say who has the authority?
Hello. Yeah, Sven.
Yes.
Yeah. For the inventory transfer and the issuing material and return material, who has the authority to move all the items, and also is there any method to request from the system, or we have to request it by manually by email or Teams or something like that?
So there's no, I guess, like stores request methodology that that we have at the moment. That's a project I want to kick off in the future as well. That effectively takes a Core stores request system, but does it in an Epicor world. So there's no requesting at the moment, but because so many people deal with parts and all of that, there's an expectation that that when you take a part off the shelf, and you're the one that's taking the part off the shelf, you need to either do the transaction yourself. So you need to issue that part to the job. So that could be the workshop technician, also has the access in Epicor to be able to do that. And we have the same process in Australia. Or you need to notify the job planner that you've taken this item from this location, this serial number, and you've now consumed it to this job. And then the job planner, like Amrul, will do the transaction for you. So I'll let you in-house decide on whether you train the technicians to do the transaction, or whether you train the technicians to record on the drawing, or to record and let Amrul know, hey, I've taken this item, please issue to your job. So there's two. So here in the workshop, some of the department areas in the workshop areas, they will do their own issuing. And some of the time they might write it on the drawing and send it back to the production engineer, and the production engineer will do the transaction when they get back to their table. So there's both there that happens depending on the area. So I leave that to you to decide how you want to run and manage. But workshop, all the workshop technicians and everybody in this session have the ability to move material and to issue material to a job. Because the expectation is, it's better that we have, people doing the correct thing and managing inventory so that we have correct inventory and correct stock balance and correct costs on the job. Then we restrict it too much, and then people think it's not their job. But yeah, I leave it to you guys to determine, how you want to manage it locally. Cool. Part label printing. So I'll quickly touch on this one. So there's a part label printing, and you can also print equipment labels. You just effectively open up this menu. You select the part number or type in the part number. So you can go new like this and type in the part number. And then it will print. I'll do just a preview for the moment, but Matt's setting up for your label printers. I think he's working with Cerberry potentially. So you'll have label printers in the workshop, I believe, and allows you to print barcoded labels to stick on the parts. And that's just a useful thing. And then later we can use barcode scanners to scan this part number. This barcode has this part number in the barcode. So that's the benefit of it. And the last one is, if a whole job is being made to inventory, and this is really for Amro and Saiful Haq, who are the main people that manage the jobs, but there's the one called the job receipt to inventory. So this might be a whole assembly, like a manifold or a subsystem. And you just need to know, Malta will show you as part of the production process and part of the production training, but just so everybody knows as well, when a whole job is complete and needs to go into inventory, we need to use this menu where you receipt the whole job, the whole item into inventory, and then you put it on the shelf. Could be a manifold, could be a complex subsystem with electronic components, mechanical components. So there's different levels. The part could be as simple as a filter, or it could be a whole, the inventory can be a whole system. Like an NEE bottle or something. All right, so that's moving. Common issues and fixes. So here's just a little bit of a summary, I guess. So engineers in the workshop. So moving parts, you use the inventory transfer to move parts, or the bulk inventory transfer. You can use the bulk one. Yeah. You can issue parts to a job. You use issue material. You return parts from the job. You use return material. You remove a part from inventory. You send it to the scrap warehouse. So this is just basic overview of the different movements. Part administrators, some names that you may know or may be familiar with. Michael Wolf is up in engineering, mechanical. Alf is our production electronics coordinator, supervisor. Debbie is our senior procurement. Jack is our procurement officer. And any production engineer in Australia also has ability to manipulate to edit part data. And we have ERP support. So these are the things. We can add a part into inventory that doesn't come from a PO or job. So if you find the part out of nowhere, or it was never in inventory before, then you need to get in contact to us and we can put it into inventory. It mainly legacy part numbers. So if we have like an RV return from offshore and this part has never been back to TNT for maybe 5-10 years or something like that, so you haven't stock take it yet, then we can add it into inventory when it comes back. We can edit bins or warehouses. So if you change your labeling on your warehouse, you change your bin number, let us know. We edit it. Chungkit can edit it. We can update and make sure you have the right bins. Or if you need to change a part from quantity bearing to non-quantity bearing, this is something that the ERP team needs to do.
So basically, Sven, if you want to move around the item from the bin or the area, you cannot simply, all need to be notified, right? All need to be recorded, in other words.
Yes, it needs to be, the transaction needs to happen in the system. And the importance of that is so that you have accurate stock, so that you don't fail a financial audit. Because the auditors will come around and say, okay, show me that part number on that shelf. It says it's in this bin. And then you go there and it's not there. And so, okay, then there's a problem with your process. Who's not updating the process? And then they'll put some, failure findings on our audit as part of that process. So we get audited once a year in Australia, and Malaysia will start to get audited for inventory as well, now that we're going to manage inventory in the system.
So we might need assistance in the future.
Yeah. So it's important we track it, and it's important you assign responsibility with senior areas who to do it. So take for example, Nick, you're in the lead position, right? In the workshop, we do have not everybody needs to worry about doing the movement, but we have designated some people like a workshop assistant or specific key people in each area, and say, anybody who needs to move a part or take it from the shelf, you let this person know, and this person will do the movement. And then that person can do the training and have the understanding. Maybe first you can take care of it, and then later you can delegate it away. And once you feel that the process is working and you're happy and it's under control. So between you, Saiful Haq, Amrul, Tazarik, Sharul, I let you guys manage how you want to run the workshop area.
Okay. Sharwata.
Sven,
Yes.
who will be create the part number? I see the Debbie and the Jack as the from the procurement side, right?
Say again.
Is that the procurement can create the part number?
Procurement, yeah. So I mean, in Australia, we have our procurement team can create part numbers within the system. For your side at the moment, you request the part number creation through the Beacon web, and then they will whether it's an electronic or mechanical parts, we'll review it. So I'll just go back to the So for mechanical parts, Michael Wolf will review it, and for electrical, electronic parts, Alf will review it. For general parts, I will review it initially, and then later somebody else, like maybe Debbie, might review it.
TTWRPU apa?
Does that answer your question, Sobri?
Mic on.
But we don't have a procurement rep in here.
You don't have a procurement rep?
Yeah. In this meeting.
Oh, in this meeting? No. So procurement rep, we'll be giving them training on parts in general, but we're not giving them training on equipment or moving parts. So that's separate.
Okay.
Yep. So you guys I mean, this training session is more about managing equipment and managing inventory, and then an overview on parts, and they will also have an overview on parts, but in relation to purchase parts. Yep. Cool. All right. What's the time now? 11:30. We still got a bit more, so I hope we might run a little bit over time, but I think it's important to go through because it's quite an important area. So, equipment. Okay, so first things first. What's the difference between equipment and inventory? So equipment, as I mentioned in the introductory session, it creates some sort of future value to the business. You know, that future value could be we hire it. You know, it's our tooling, our RV tool, our RVs, our RV tooling. It could be, you know, reelers and other tooling that we may hire to clients. We also use it to make money. So it might be a welding machine, for example. And it may be considered a fixed asset, which is more of a financial term, so you don't need to worry too much about it. But effectively, it means we depreciate it on our books. We can get some tax deductions because, you know, we make money from it. We can get some tax deductions. So that's what that means. It's also equipment because we perform some sort of maintenance or servicing on it. We need to do certification, and we need to do regular inspections. We need to calibrate it, or we need to maintain it or service it, you know, sometimes, right? So your RV tooling is service equipment, right? So that's why it's considered an equipment. We might need to track client equipment. If they give us equipment to manage, whether it's part of a campaign or whether we store it for them. Here in Australia, we store Woodside, Shell, and Impex equipment. That's what that's for. So we can track them there as well. And we track third-party equipment as well. Hello.
Hello. All right.
Wrong place? No?
No, I was going to do some more minion training, but...
Oh, okay. I've got it until about midday. I'm running a bit late on the
right.
training.
It's just a random thought.
Okay. Yep.
Not a pre-planned thought.
Yep. No worries. Sorry, guys. Somebody just came to the meeting room. Yeah. So tracking client equipment or tracking third-party equipment, like something we hire from a vendor. So maybe sometimes we don't have the equipment, but we need it for the campaign, so we hire it from somebody else. But we might want to track it in our system because we need to make sure it works. We might need to test it. So we need to, you know, open a job on it. So we make it an equipment in our system and we track it, and so we don't lose it and we can return it to the vendor. Yeah. And sometimes case by case, if it doesn't really fall into inventory, we might put it into equipment instead, simply so we can track it. So that's what equipment is in a nutshell. So how does that differ to inventory? So inventory are components. So they're either finished goods or they're, you know, smaller components like a filter, a fastener, an O-ring. So these are components that we either use in manufacturing, we consume in servicing our equipment, you know, or we use in production in some sense of the word, right? You know, it could also be a spare part, which we keep offshore. And then later when the RV needs to change a gasket on something or seal on something, boom, they consume the inventory and they use it. So that's what inventory is. Inventory are these basic components, or could be, you know, full assemblies that we keep on the shelf until we need it in manufacturing, in servicing, or we might just sell the whole item to a client. So we might have hot stabs on the shelf that we've made, and then the client says, I want to buy 3 hot stabs, and then we sell it to them. That's inventory that we've sold. Those hot stabs are not in equipment because we're not servicing the hot stab. Yes, it's got pressure test certification, but once it's certified, right? If, however, it's something like an LED light where we regularly need to do a pressure test, or we need to service it, change out the lights, change out some of the things after it's been used offshore, and we need to return it back to operational status, then we turn that into an equipment, and then we need to do maintenance on it. So that's when the inventory becomes an equipment. And that's the distinction between the both. So Sobri, you'll be working with Chun Kit to do a bit of a stock take on inventory, and also a bit of an audit, stock take for your FIC assets, which is now known as equipment in Epicor. Now, just a note.
Sorry, one thing there with regards to slip rings, that'll be classed as equipment then, or inventory.
Yes, I believe slip rings would. Do you do servicing on your slip rings regularly?
No, we send them away to get serviced.
Yeah. Okay. So I would probably class those as equipment, because you do need to do some form of maintenance on it. You hold some certification against it, but when
offshore,
let's say
offshore, offshore, that it would come under their inventory list, though, wouldn't it? Because it's a part that they carry offshore.
Correct. Yeah. So there are some things that borderline the two, and we struggle a little bit with that here as well. We have slip rings at the moment here in Australia, and they're in inventory, and they remain in inventory until effectively they're consumed or put onto the system, and then they're taken out of inventory at that point in time.
And they become equipment, do they? When they're offshore.
Yeah, and then they become a child equipment of the subsystem, effectively.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So, and where the parent might be is the ROV or the TMS, for example, right? So
or the winch, or whatever. Yeah,
wherever the thing is consumed to. Yep.
Right.
So not everything in inventory though becomes equipment. So like a filter, if you consume a filter from your inventory list, you won't make that an equipment, right? Because effectively that filter's, after you used it, you throw it away, right? It's gone.
It's a consumable, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So that's the distinction. So, there's some things that might be a bit difficult. Then you just ask us and we'll sort of work through the scenarios. But most things are clear cut, right? Cool. And just for you to know, all inventory has a TMT part number because it needs to. It needs to be a quantity bearing TMT part number. But some equipment may have a TMT part number, may not. We might have got that equipment from a third party, or we might have bought it in. We didn't make it here. We didn't. It wasn't a manufactured TMT item. Then it doesn't have a TMT part number. So that's just a bit of a distinction between the two. I'll show you the equipment screen in a moment. There's a field where you can put the TMT part number, but it's optional. It's not mandatory.
Shouldn't equipment have a asset number?
Yes, yeah. So, but in Epicor, assets or FIC assets are now called equipment. So effectively, you just need to change your thinking that anything that you considered a FIC asset, a Frankie Core asset here, all of these are now called equipment in Epicor.
Right, they still carry the same number.
They carry the same number. We'll just be replacing the AS with an M for Malaysia, and EQ for equipment, MEQ. Okay. So that way, over time you might replace the labeling and it will say MEQ, but effectively everybody there, all the logistics, all your team will know that anything that says AS with that number, it's in Epicor will be MEQ with the same number. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And we did the same here in Australia as well. We had all our FIC assets up to I think 12,000 or something like that, and we converted them across. And then all the new ones just get labeled with the EQ in Australia, and in Malaysia it will be MEQ, which is this next slide here. Yeah, so in Malaysia, equipment tracked by MEQ, the legacy will be AS numbers, and there's a field for you to put the legacy AS number as well, and I'll show you that in a sec. It may have a TMT part number, and many equipment have serial numbers because most of them you have some sort of traceability certification or otherwise that you're tracking. So a lot do have serial numbers, but not every single one has a serial number. And just as a comparison, inventory is tracked by TMT part numbers. Here are the TMT part numbers. They need to be quantity bearing. They also may have a serial number or lot number, but not necessarily to have one depending on the requirement of the part. And here's some example equipment where you can see it's AS00324, and in Australia it's EQ in Epicor 00324, right? So it's just easy that when you see an old fixed asset ID label, you don't need to, worry about, trying to compare the two numbers. Cool. All right, searching for equipment. So I showed you quickly earlier here where we were searching for, I wrote the word manifold is always a good one because it returns lots of results. What's going on here? Research results at this time. Oh, I broke it. Okay, yeah, it's a good one. So manifold, and if you're searching for equipment, you click on the tag here in the tag section, equipment, and then it filters down to the equipment, and then you can go from there. The other menu is the equipment dashboard. So just let me show you on your screen, for example, it's here under the equipment section, dashboard equipment. I'll open it up in the Australian system because you don't have any equipment in the new company just yet. But this is our equipment dashboard. If you leave everything blank here and just click refresh, top left-hand corner, it will load all equipment in the equipment database in one go. And just as I mentioned earlier, for inventory, we will also create an equipment dashboard that will allow you to see equipment in either company and filter accordingly. So again, if in a pinch, you see we've got, some sort of tool or whatever, and you can see it's operational, you can see it's locally here in our warehouse. Hey guys, I'm in a pinch here. Can you send it up? Whatever, at least it gives you some visibility of what we have down here. And, before needing to ask the question, whether it can be sent up and vice versa as well. We can see the stuff that you guys have. So here again, you can right mouse click, copy to Excel, do a search in there. You can group. So I want to see everything that's in the Typhoon, we're starting to store equipment and track equipment offshore as well as inventory. This is Typhoon 9. These are all the equipment in Typhoon 9. Where's the description? We've got everything from LED lights, quite a few of them, thrusters, manifolds. These are equipment groups. So Owen is starting to group his systems and his subsystems of the ROV, and we'll do the same for Malaysia at some point under equipment groupings. And then, beneath these, you will have your children equipment, your slip ring or TMS or motor or winch and things of that nature. So that's equipment searching in a nutshell. And this is another area where you search for your equipment. And the other very useful tool, which was maybe only about 6 months old, so recently developed, is in Beacon Web. So we've got a section called equipment here on Beacon Web, and you've got this very powerful search area. Well, I'm looking for a reeler, and I'm looking for the Axe2 umbilical reeler. Boom, there it is. It's in the Malaysian warehouse, so it seems. There's some basic unit dimensions here. I can see that Matt Verne is the champion for this equipment. So if I want to ask anything about this equipment, I can get in touch with him. That's the original TMT part number for it. And various other details here. Now, some of these details you can edit, so you can update length, width, height, and weight, and you can update the warehouse and the bin and save that. And you can also bulk move equipment as well. So this is good for logistics. You can go, I want to send this reeler. I want to send this tool manifolds, and I want to move them both to the Typhoon 18 warehouse. Save, boom, off they go. And it gets updated in Epicor, and the equipment moves. And you know where your equipment are at any given point in time.
To generate a report or a document?
At the moment, not. That's that whole stores request system that I mentioned. So I want to build probably here in Beacon Web a whole like the stores Frankie stores request, but allows you to move equipment, inventory, consumables, allows you to generate packing lists, allows you to generate shipment lists and requests, etc., etc. So that's going to be a hefty project in itself, but I want to build that up and have that you know, up and running hopefully within the next year. It's probably going to be about 4 month, maybe 6 month project, considering the complexity of it. But yeah, I want to do that definitely.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, that's the feedback we got from Australia as well. You know, generating lists and requests and packing lists there, because it's all administrative crap, right? So we just need to we save time and spend a little bit of time developing the software. Cool. So that's searching for equipment. Enterprise search in Epicor, equipment dashboards, and Beacon Web. Did somebody say something?
Yeah. I want to ask.
Yes.
We just do the packing list manual, right?
At the moment, yes. Yeah. Yep. At the moment, the stores here as well, they've got like spreadsheets, and then they will, you know, copy the data from Epicor and input it manually to generate the packing list. But later, you know, it'd be nice. You know, I have to work out all the specifications, but you know, you type in a client, you know, the address details comes from Epicor automatically. You type in a sales order, all of that gets sucked in. You type in whatever job number, and then it all gets sucked in. You just say where the equipment's going, and then you can generate a list.
Okay.
That would be good. And I mentioned about the printing of the label. So here again, the equipment label, boom, and you can generate equipment barcode label to stick on the equipment to go with the equipment there as well. All right, equipment maintenance. So this is how you manage your equipment. Let's talk about that. So equipment maintenance. So here, this screen here, equipment -TMT. That's where you manage or edit equipment data, and equipment tracker allows you to track the data. So I will just go into Australia so that we have some data to look at. Equipment. All right, so this is where you edit equipment data. So on the left here, you've got a bit of a tree view. So you can sort by warehouse, so that's by location, or you can sort by geo control. Now, geo control or category effectively is categorization of the equipment. Geo control is important because when you do, like, remember Nick's question about, it's not for, you know, a client, we just need a service and make sure this equipment is ready so that, you know, the next time we send offshore, next time for a client, it's good to go. Well,
Again, it's GL.
Yeah, the GL control.
What's the meaning of GL?
Oh, GL, general ledger. It's a financial term.
Okay.
It stands for general ledger. Again, that probably doesn't mean much for you as well. So GL is probably easier. But general ledger it's an account. It's a financial account. So effectively, it means where do the costs go? So this area here, when you book a job, when you create a job for the equipment and you book time and materials, the costs will go to a specific GL, general ledger account. Just consider it a financial account. So Each RV has its own GL account. We've got GL account for hire tooling, and we've got some client. CT stands for client tooling. You may not have all of these GL accounts because we manage a lot more, but yours will be RV systems that you have, and yours would probably be hire tooling on the main ones. Yeah. So let's look at hire tooling. Let's look at a hot stab. This one. 2-port hot stab. So we can hire this out to a client on a campaign. The cost, if we need to do some maintenance to this thing, maybe the nose of the hot stab is damaged, we need to replace it. Book 15 minutes to do it, and book the cost of the new nose. Then that cost will go to the hire tooling account. Yeah. Here you can edit the equipment data. So there's a TMT part number, its status, is it operational? Is it on a mob? Is it, is it scrapped or dead? Where's the disposed here? The FIC asset number for reference. You can upload an image for the equipment. Don't know if I can find with an image. Its location, its categories. So, there's lots of nice categories here to pick from. Different sort of systems, storage, subsea intervention, survey type equipment, etc. Who is the equipment champion? So who ultimately is responsible for this equipment? So a lot of it, maybe Jiwa Hata is responsible. Then the rest, Sobri, Marwan is responsible for. So these will be the names that you'll often see here. So if you need to do something with the equipment, you contact that person. You say, hey, something is up with this equipment, or you need to notify them. They're the person to notify.
Sven,
yes.
all the attachment for the equipment should be on the shared drive TMT, right? Like your photo, report.
Yeah. And you can start to transfer that information, and you don't need to do it. You can do it manually, but we can transfer the Epicor. You can attach it to the equipment here.
Attach to the system, and then the system will upload that attachment in the shared drive TMT, right?
Yep. So we can do as a separate exercise. We can take the stuff which is in that folder and upload it so it's here in Epicor, accessible in the central area. And take it off the T drive, because as you know, it's better to have things stored in a database, then you can access it. And later as well, in the Beacon remote app, it will allow attachments to be downloaded by offshore as well. So if you have certificates, if you have testing certs that sometimes clients ask for, then we hope to be able to allow the offshore crew to be able to download it directly from there.
To allow offshore guy download, it must be the attachment in the Epicor, right? It's not in the.
Yeah, in Epicor. Yeah, correct. Yep. Cool. So updating warehouse location is here, but also like I showed you in Beacon Web, it updates these two fields. So you can either do it in Epicor or you can do it in where was my Beacon Web? Yeah. In this area for Beacon Web. Yeah, this area here. And there's some other fields. So the red fields are the critical fields. These are the fields that need to be filled in or should be filled in. And the underlying fields or the remaining fields are optional. So again, here's serial number. This is the old Frankie called batch number, the serial number. And there's a differing serial number, so you can track in an in-service date here as well. So that's the key features there. We can set up, I won't show you today, so this is more advanced, but later when you guys are ready or you want to, we can set up maintenance planning. So we can set up on any equipment a maintenance plan. It can be recurring 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, 5 years, whatever. And it will then create a job and notify you or notify this person, whoever this person is, the champion, that this job has been created and now we're ready, we need to do certification or we need to do a new inspection. So then the system will automatically tell you when the certification is due. You don't need to manage that yourself in a spreadsheet, or you don't need to remember it. And you can stipulate other data. For example, this one here, 1000 PSI, these are the length, this is the weight. Is it customer owned? Who's the customer? Is it supplier owned? Who's the supplier? Third party equipment. Remember, I talked about that. And later we can also manage, what are the spares for this equipment? What spares do we need? Every time we send it somewhere, what spares do we need? Do we need some seals? So add the seal part number into here. And these are the spares that we need to send with it. Yeah. So that's useful. So this tree is quite handy. This tree, let's take a look. Typhoon 22. So you can see Typhoon 22 has a whole bunch of equipment on it. Then there's the Typhoon 22 RV system. Yeah. And then under the system, you've got the LARS, you've got the onboard equipment, you've got the Typhoon itself, you've got the surface control, the TMS, and then beneath it are the equipment or the children equipment in that. So it's all a bit of a tree hierarchy. And you start to have, right, this equipment now belongs to this system. And, if this, these actuators break, then they come back onshore. Or, no, sorry, where's a good example? Electrical system. So yeah, if this bottle is broken or whatever, and we send back onshore, then we replace this equipment with maybe another equipment number. We unmarry this child from the parent and we put the new equipment on. And this is this area here. See this parent field? It allows you to specify what the parent equipment is. So one parent can have many children, and you can see the children here, as well as in the, so if I click this one here.
If the parent divorce?
The top parent, yeah. So the way you, on every single equipment, you can specify its parent, and that's how you divorce it. You don't do it the other way around. So you need to go to the child if you want to remove it from the parent.
Okay, got it.
Unless you're trying to make a joke about divorcing, that's different. Okay, so I talked about tree selection here. I talked about the parent-child relationship here. I talked about the category here. That's just it just allows you to search for the equipment a bit better. And I talked about the geo control. That's where the costs go. And I guess you can call it the high-level category. This is subcategory. This is primary category. And also it's important because it's costs. And let's talk about non-equipment. So you will see some equipment, mainly in Australia, but we'll start to build it up in Malaysia as well. You'll see what we call, see here it says equipment group. And when I click on it, it's a non-equipment. This is just a grouping. It's not a real thing. This is not a real equipment, but it just allows Owen, an offshore team or whoever, to group a bunch of children under everything that we consider to be the surface control system or the TMS. Yeah. So it's not a real equipment. It's called non-equipment. But it just allows you to group it like that. So that's what a non-equipment is. Yeah. All right. We talked about these ones: status, TMT part number, the champion, the warehouse, the bin, the control, the serial number, and the image. The equipment champion, as I mentioned, is the responsible person for the equipment, who ultimately is responsible for decisions on this equipment, and who needs to be notified when something is being done to this equipment or whatever. So they also deal with the maintenance planning for the equipment, and they're the first level decision maker, I guess, for the equipment. Now, yes, there might be budgets and all that Idris, Peter Hunstock, Paul Colley needs to approve, sure, but these are the first level people that say yes or no, we need to do something with the equipment. And then, if we need to spend more money or whatever, then that's the normal authority through TMT. I showed you a little bit about maintenance plans. I won't go in detail today just for timing, but later when you're ready and you want to set up some maintenance plans, we can walk you through it, but it's fairly easy. You just do the description, recurring, you set the frequency, you set how many buffer days. So we need 20 days to get it, NDT DPI'd on the skid before it's due, and that's the next due date, right? So it allows you to do your certification and your planning of preventative maintenance. Equipment tracker. So equipment tracker allows you to view read-only information. as I showed you on the earlier session, there's two screens. There's entry screens where you edit the data and tracker screens where you review data. So you notice this tracker screen has a few more details. Let's see if I can find something with some movements. I just want to show you the job log and the movement log. TMT, hire tooling. Hopefully this one has something.
Then I have a question.
Yes.
For instance, right, the TMS, it's a non-operational, just now, non-operational equipment, just now?
Non-equipment, yep.
Non-equipment, right?
Yeah.
Let's say if someone wants to rent our TMSs, but all the the child in that TMS has a GL, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the TMS itself didn't have a GL. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, the TMS does have a GL as well. Yep. I'll show you there. Yeah, it does. So you can raise a job on their TMS, and you effectively then doing work on all the child equipment, and we do that. So one example of that. So you know your calipers, your vernier calipers. We've got like, I don't know, 50 here, right? A lot. Between engineering, workshop, and production engineering, we've got a lot. So we have one equipment group called calipers, and we raise one job to calibrate all the calipers, because you're not going to raise 50 jobs to do each one individually. So we raise the job against the non-equipment, the group, the parent group, and then we do that job against for all of them, because it's just, you know, each caliper takes 5 minutes to calibrate. You're not going to raise a job for 5 minutes. It's silly. So again, if you're doing something on the TMS as a whole, then you put the job against the TMS. If you're doing the job against one component of the TMS, then you do it there.
Oh, okay, got it.
So equipment tracking, maintenance job log. So here you can go in the equipment tracker for any given equipment and look at the job log. These are all the jobs that have ever been opened against this equipment. And you can go and study that, and you can try and find out information if you want to look a little bit in the history as to why these jobs were opened up. Yeah. And then the other one is the movement log. So this is all of the times that the equipment has moved, when it was moved, who moved it, and the new location that it was moved to. So it allows you to trace the history, yeah, of the equipment movement if you're trying to hunt down something. So this is what the equipment tracker is handy for. Maintenance log and movement log. Importance of equipment location. So I've talked about this already a few times. Just like inventory, it's important to know where your equipment are. Why? Because in a pinch, if you need to know where it is there in this warehouse, in this bin. Is it offshore? Is it onshore? Is it on hire? What's its status? Is it broken? Is it red tagged? Is it operational and good to go, right? So if you maintain this data in Epicor, then somebody else can look at that data and automatically know, you know, where they stand with that equipment, and you don't need to go and, you know, investigate and spend time. So it's just a bit more efficient. And you can update the location in Epicor here, or you can update it in Beacon Web here, as I showed you before. Cool. And the last bit before we jump into questions is I'll show you about jobs. So not everybody has the ability to open a job. Amaral and Saiful Haq are the main ones that we are teaching how to manage jobs. And then from there, if more people need to know how to manage jobs, then we'll teach them. But because jobs are relatively complex and is important to get it right, we'll teach a smaller group of people. They will be the super user, the champion, and then they can teach other people, and we can give you access to do that. So we start off small, and then that way, then it's not too much information for everybody to know at once.
Then is it possible to include Tashi as well, since he's the service engineer?
Yes, it could be. Yeah, definitely. Initially, we sort of worked out because we're giving Amaru and Saiful Haq like the full job training. We're talking about how to import BOM, how to import, data from SolidWorks, how to manage the materials and all of that. And then from there, they, together with Chun Kit, can train Tazariq on, the smaller, simpler jobs that he may need to run. So that's I guess how we're doing it, and that's just I guess timeline as well. But yeah, definitely we can extend that out. Okay, so I'll just quickly show you about jobs, maintenance jobs specifically. So as we know, I said in the first session, there's 3 types of jobs in Epicor: maintenance jobs, manufacturing jobs, and project jobs. Now, Amaru and Saiful Haq will be trained mainly in manufacturing jobs, but maintenance jobs are, I guess, a simpler version of a manufacturing job. And you raise a maintenance job for a piece of equipment, whereas you raise a manufacturing job to make a part number. So let me show you. Here. So maintenance job entry, I'm just going to show you here. Not all of you have access to this, but this is just for your understanding of how it works. So maintenance job, when we create a new one, new job number, that's the next job number. In Malaysia, your maintenance job will be M with an extra M in front, M for Malaysia, MNT, MMNT. And then you pick an equipment. So what's the equipment number? So let's take a quick look on equipment that we were looking at before. Electrical system. We'll throw this equipment number in here. Boom. So now we're raising this maintenance job to do maintenance or service work on this equipment. Yeah. This equipment we can see is for the Typhoon 22 system. We can see the GL account is for Typhoon 22. So when we book time and cost to this job, the cost will go to the Typhoon 22. If that is incorrect, you need to go into the equipment champion and Owen here in this case, and you need to tell them, hey, the cost is wrong for this job and we need to put it to the right area. So this just allows you to see where the costs are going to go to. So this is for work that it's like internal. We need to make this equipment so it's ready so that we can go and hire it out again or something of that nature. If it's work that we're doing from a client request or something like that, there will be a separate process where we manage that, and that'll probably go through the other job area where we can also list the equipment ID, but we might be doing work for the clients or something of this nature. So this is really more for internal stuff that Nick had his question earlier on. You pick the team, assets team in Australia or whoever it might be. You pick the planner, pick the required by date of the job, and need to change out electrical connectors. Oh, and where is it? Unplanned maintenance. Sorry, just let me write a note while I remember for the upgrade. Topics, categories, geo control types. Okay, there you go. So here's a maintenance job. And so that's the beginnings of it. And then we can start to add, I want to add an operation. So that's a task for somebody to do and book some time to. I want to add it for we've got a lot more than you, so yours will be a lot simpler. Electronics technician. They will need to replace connectors. Comments and instructions. Connectors are burnt out. Don't know why. Please investigate and replace to operational readiness. Yeah. We think it will take them, we give them a budget 2 hours initially. And then if they need to take more, then they need to come back and let us know. Then we can update this and away we go. Then they can start to book time to this maintenance job, to that operation. Later, if you need to, we need to buy some materials. Either we raise a requisition and the material will appear directly on this job, or Amro and Saiful Haq were to be taught on how to add material directly to the job, and we can purchase the materials here, purchase and supplier. So I won't go into too much detail because most of you don't need to know or manage this. You just need to know that maintenance jobs exist. You need to know how to book your time to it, and you need to know that maintenance jobs are to maintain a piece of equipment in general. Ooh. You can see there's a job folder here, and you can store information relating to this job in that job folder, and that'll be stored in Epicor. You can also store some stuff you might want to store directly on the equipment because it will go with the equipment no matter what job it's on, but some stuff is just job specific. But as you know, in the tracker, you can always find out equipment tracker here. You can always find out all the jobs that were raised. You can go into the jobs, look in the job folder, track the history through, and you can find all of that information out. Okay, any more questions about what we've seen here today? So we've talked about inventory and parts. We talked about the difference between inventory and equipment. Equipment is something that you hire out. We do maintenance on, we service, we need to track for clients or vendors. Inventory is like spare parts or things that we consume in manufacturing or consume in servicing our equipment, right? So these are, the raw things that we put on the shelf, or it could be finished goods that we consume, like the slip ring that we consume into an ROV, and we might convert it to equipment or we might not. And we talked a little bit about maintenance. Everybody reasonably comfortable with that? You obviously have more questions, when you start to do the work within the system, and that's okay. We'll be there to train you and support you the weeks after go live anyway. So that's not a problem. Cool. If no further questions, then I'll stop the recording, and I'll send you the recording and put that onto the SharePoint site, which I showed you earlier, and you can watch back later. Or I think Marwan was the one. Yeah, Marwan had to leave. He can watch later as well, and Anwar and Saiful Haq, who are away, can have a watch of that.